Good evening. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, but I hope it has been happy. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. So yesterday, we had the terrible revelation that the scriptures have fake news. Or if you prefer, alternative facts. So obviously there are conversations where, who knows, there wouldn't have been any Buddhist monk or anybody there. For instance, between Tapasi, the monk who belonged to the Jain order, and of course the Jain leader, and then the conversation between them and Upali. So a lot of it is, shall we say, made up or creative. It's creative, very creative. So of course that does leave us with the question, well, you know, what are we to believe? Well, we can relieve ourselves of that question, because of course the Dharma isn't something we're supposed to believe. It's something we're supposed to investigate. And we have to separate out all the stories and the exaggerations and the hagiography, which is the description of the saints and how it's all built up over time. And remember that these scriptures weren't written down for, what, 800 years, I think, something like that. In Sri Lanka, they were written down in the 5th century, Common Era. And so there was 8 centuries where stories are being told, handed about, etc. And of course, we have another set of scriptures which is in the which is only in Chinese, from another sect called the Sarvastivadin group. And Bhikkhu Analayo has been studying those, and he uses them a great deal in his books. And we always get the same message, but of course there are variations. So what is it that we know the Buddha taught, you see? That's the question. And I think that we can start with the Bodhipakkhya Dhamma, which translates as those factors that you need to become fully liberated. And there's 37 of them, and they're well attested to. And what I'm looking at now is the Sutta 77, which is the Maha Sakuludayin discourse. So it's a discourse that's given to this wanderer called Sakuludayin. And we won't start at the beginning. We'll start somewhere in the middle, because right here in the middle of this are these Bodhipakkhya Dhamma. And you'll know most of them, though one section may come as a little surprise. So the first, so there's 37. So the first 4 are, of course, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Again, I proclaim to my disciples the way to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Here, a meditator abides contemplating the body as body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world, any desire for worldly things, and of course, the sadness of any loss. And so he abides contemplating feelings as feelings. I prefer it to be translated feelings in feelings, because it's a direction as to what we do when we're practicing vipassana. We're trying to get into the feelings. I always remember Sadhu Pandita always talk about plunging into the feelings. And contemplating the mind, heart mind, remember, it's not thinking, it's chitta. The word chitta combines both our emotional and thought life. So it's contemplating the heart mind in the heart mind, and contemplating mind. Now it's translated, Bhikkhu Bodhi translated as mind objects, but if you remember, we did go through the discourse on how to establish mindfulness. and they include such things as the hindrances, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and so on, and the 4 noble truths. So that's the first 4 of the 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, or the Dhamma that you need to become fully liberated. Now, the next one is to do with striving, the 4 great strivings. So it's put in a sort of slightly difficult way, but again, we've done this. Here a bhikkhu awakens zeal, real ardent effort for the non-arising of unarisen evil, unwholesome states. So in other words, not to allow unwholesome states to control us. And he makes effort, arouses energy, and exerts his mind and strives. So a real effort there to make sure that any time some unwholesomeness comes, we're very quick to not indulge in it. And in the same way, to abandon those arisen unwholesome states. So when unwholesome states arise and we find ourselves drawn towards them, to abandon them. So that's the striving when it comes to unwholesome states. And when it comes to wholesome states, of course, he awakens the zeal for the arising of unarisen wholesome states. So whenever there's an opportunity to develop a virtue, then that's what we do. And he awakens the zeal for the continuance, non-disappearance, strengthening, increase, and fulfillment by development of the arisen wholesome states. So to do that, he must arouse effort, energy, exerts his mind, and strives. So there's your 4 great efforts, and it's of course to do with our ethics, with our internal morality, beautiful states of mind, and getting rid of those that we see as unwholesome and unskillful. So that definitely the Buddha teaches. Now the next one are the 4 bases of spiritual power. That's how it's translated, but I think it's better to see it also translated as success. Now it puts a spiritual success, which is true, of course, but it also, these qualities can also be used for success in ordinary daily activity, in ordinary daily life. So I have proclaimed to my disciples the way to develop the 4 bases of spiritual power. The basis here he develops, or here they develop the basis for spiritual power consisting of concentration due to zeal and determined striving. So now this is the word is chanda, and it gives that feel of really wanting something, remember the word tanha, which comes up in the dependent origination, has that specific meaning of wrong desire, often translated as craving, which is a bit strong, thirst, and then you have this word chanda, which means also desire, but you can have wrong desire and right desire, miccha chanda and sama chanda. So here it's developing that real desire for spiritual progress, or in ordinary daily life, just for success in the work you're doing. And he develops the spiritual power consisting in concentration due to the energy and determined striving. So again, the desire is not enough. You've got to put your energy into it. Okay, and that brings about success. And then he develops the spiritual power consisting in concentration due to the purity of the mind, here the heart mind, and determined striving. So again, it's to do with purifying the mind, making sure that the wrong intentions aren't creeping in there. So for instance, even in ordinary daily life, when you're, say, at your work, should we say, the most wholesome purpose that you might put to your work, whatever you do, is one of service. But if it's, of course, to impress somebody, just to make money, then it becomes slightly corrupt. So one has to have a purity of heart, and then it becomes a spiritual practice. So you don't separate ordinary daily life from, you know, sitting meditation. And then finally, he develops the basis for spiritual power, consisting in concentration due to the investigation and determined striving. So again, it's investigation. Now, this investigation is to do, in terms of vipassana, is to do, of course, with the three characteristics of existence, you know, the cause of suffering, impermanence, and not self. But in ordinary daily life, it's always to keep that sort of sense of investigation, of curiosity, of reflection, right? Of reflection as to what we're doing, why we're doing. And of course, you can take that into any work that you're doing. So now these four qualities, the zeal, the energy, the giving of your heart mind to what you're doing, the giving of your heart to what you're doing, and this reflection, this constant reflection on what you're doing and investigation of what you're doing. These four qualities are what leads you to success. So these are not only for spiritual success in terms of liberation, but also for ordinary daily achievements. So that's worth contemplating, no? Absolutely. And then we have the, so that's, there's four of them, with four, so we've already got to 12, that's 37. The next are the 5 faculties. So these are the spiritual faculties, but again, they relate to ordinary daily life. Develops the faculty of faith, confidence. Here, Bhikkhu Bodhi translated as faith, which has that double sort of meaning of belief, you know. Best to think of it as a sort of real confidence. And the confidence grows the more you practice, of course. And in ordinary daily life, the more you bring mindfulness to bear, the more you affectionate mindfulness to bear, the more you see how it produces results for us. And then there's again the faculty of energy. All right, there's always this, you know, putting energy into what we're doing. The faculty of mindfulness, of course, the faculty of concentration, which, remember, is much more to do with a steadiness of attention, you know, being able to keep your attention on what you're doing. And then finally, the faculty of wisdom, which here has two meanings. It has both the wisdom that we have as from which we are working, and it also has the meaning of insight, right? Which is seeing things as they really are as we go from moment to moment. So those are your 5 spiritual faculties. Now, when somebody achieves first path and fruit and becomes a stream entrant, these are then known as powers. Up until we are stream entrants, that sense of confidence is never absolutely completely established. But when a person enters into the stream, has a deep enough insight into the way things are, of course, in a sense, that confidence now is based on personal direct experience and cannot be shaken, right? Even though under torture, you might say that you didn't experience it, but that's of course a bit extreme. So now we've had another 10, so I do believe that brings us up to 22. Then there are the 7 factors of enlightenment, the 7 factors of awakening, which again have, we mustn't see them only in terms of the actual vipassana practice, but in ordinary daily life. So there's that awareness, mindfulness, you know, being our doing. And it starts off, always starts off with, supported by seclusion, dispassion, cessation, and the results of relinquishment. So in ordinary daily life, really, that's just constantly being aware of being taken over by things that we are attached to, things that we become dependent on to create this mental state of happiness, and to slowly begin to let go of those things. So the first one is the awareness. Actually, on this list, it comes last, doesn't it? I'm not sure. Just a minute. So here it develops the mindfulness enlightenment factor. Okay. Then the investigation of states, which is the curiosity. And then the energy, of course. And then now he's got it as rapture, but this really is the joy. It is the joy that we get from investigating something. It's interest, a sense of wonder as well, a sense of wonder and the interest and the desire to investigate. And then there's the tranquility, just the general background state of calmness, which comes about because you're not trying to achieve something. And then there's the concentration, of course, which I've always thought the phrase steadiness of attention is closer to what we want, since the word concentration of it has that feeling of tension about it, or at least does for me. And finally, this equanimity, which is that balanced heart-mind. So it's the ability not to come from, positions of fear and aversion and prejudice and preference, and also to have to come from a place where you're not holding on to a view in the sense of I'm right and everybody else is wrong. This is the only way you can look at things. To be much more open to the idea that all the views we have are a certain perspective, and that other people will have similar but slightly different perspectives. So it's being open, really, open-minded, open-hearted, and that's the equanimity. So those are your seven factors of enlightenment. So that's your awareness. I mean, the way I do it is the way that they match each other or balance each other. So there's the awareness, of course, which keeps everything in balance. And then there's the concentration and the effort needed to maintain that. There's the calmness that goes with the interest, or else you try to get overexcited or whatever. And then there's this investigation, which is matched with this open heart mind. Okay. And of course, he says then, many disciples of mine abide this way, having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge, direct experience. So that brings us up to 29. Okay, so we're getting there. The next one is the Eightfold Path. I have proclaimed to my disciples the way to develop the Noble Eightfold Path. Here, a disciple develops right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So often this is taught as Sila Samadhi Panya. So Sila is your morality, your ethics, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Sila Samadhi. Samadhi refers to your meditation, which is, of course, right concentration and right awareness. There's also usually right efforts put in there with that trilogy, but of course, right effort runs through everything, yeah, and so does the mindfulness. It's all mixed up together, And Sila Samadhi and wisdom is, of course, the first two, the direct experience and how it begins to manifest in our intentions. I prefer the word attitude. So that's the Noble Eightfold Path. That's we've now come to 37. That's it. Now, without any doubt, the Buddha did actually teach these qualities, and basically that's all we need to know. In fact, we don't even need to know all this amount, but those are the 37 facts that lead to liberation. Now, then Bhikkhu Thanissaro, whose writings and talks I'm sure some of you know, has said that at that time there were 37 different chords. It was very difficult to tune the strings of the vina. The vina was like a guitar, a lute, and he's matched these 37 with the 37 different scales or modes or whatever. But I don't know where he gets that from, but it's a lovely idea. It's a lovely idea that the Buddha was, shall we say, trying to connect his teachings with music, with what is beautiful, with melody. And in a sense, he does that by doubling up on the faculties. So if you remember, the 5 faculties were the confidence, the energy, the mindfulness, the concentration, and the wisdom. And they were bumped up to powers when somebody entered the path and fruit, the first path and fruit. And in that way, he was able to get his 37. I don't know whether he did that consciously or whether it just happened. But it's just a little side note that we can keep in mind. So these things are, again, for our contemplation. But when it comes down to it, you know, keep it simple, make it simple, take it easy, and stay with the one who knows. That's Ajahn Tate's lovely quote. I love to quote that. Keep it simple. Just you know, affectionate awareness. Be mindful of what we're doing. Whenever we see something unwholesome arise, to try and be on it from the beginning and just let it go, let it pass. Allow the energy to dissipate, and then to re-establish the right attitude, the right intention in our minds. So I hope I have now undermined any doubts that you might have had after our meeting with Upali and a little bit of fake news. I can only hope my words have been of some assistance and that they have undermined all doubt, and that with your continued practice, you will become fully liberated from all suffering sooner rather than later. So we can begin our practice.